Hey everyone, my name is Baris, and welcome to my channel. Today I have a very exciting story for you guys. The title of the story is, Redemption in the Shadows, an Unlikely Confession, so, stay till the end. Detective Max Carter sat in his unmarked car, watching the dilapidated house across the street. He had been staking out the place for days, waiting for his target to show himself. The suspect was a notorious gang leader, responsible for a string of violent crimes throughout the city. Max had been working the case for months, and he was determined to bring this guy down. He had a solid plan, but he knew it would require precision and patience. He was willing to wait as long as it took to make the arrest. Finally, just as Max was about to give up hope, he saw movement inside the house. He watched as the suspect emerged from the shadows, accompanied by several of his henchmen. Max quickly radioed for backup, and a team of officers swarmed the area. The suspect and his men were caught off guard, but they put up a fight. Shots rang out, and Max watched as the bullets flew through the air. He ducked behind his car, waiting for an opening to take down the suspect. It was chaos, but Max was cool under pressure. He had trained for this moment, and he was ready to put his skills to the test. He could hear the shouts of his fellow officers over the sounds of gunfire, but he was focused on his target. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the shooting stopped. Max emerged from behind his car, the gun is drawn, ready to make the arrest. But to his surprise, the suspect was nowhere to be found. He searched the area, but the suspect had vanished into thin air. Max was furious. He had been so close to catching the guy, and now he had slipped away. Max and his team combed the area, searching for any clues. They found nothing. It was as if the suspect had vanished into thin air. Max couldn't believe it. How could he have let this happen? Days turned into weeks, and Max continued to search for the suspect. He was obsessed with finding him, but the trail had gone cold. Max was on the verge of giving up when he received a phone call from an unknown number. "Meet me at the abandoned warehouse on 4th Street, a voice whispered over the phone. "Come alone, and bring your gun." Max knew it was a trap, but he couldn't resist the chance to finally catch the suspect. He arrived at the warehouse, gun in hand, ready for a showdown. He crept inside, cautiously making his way through the darkness. As he turned a corner, he saw the suspect standing before him, a sly grin on his face. Max aimed his gun, ready to take him down, but the suspect spoke before he could pull the trigger. "You're a good detective, Max," the suspect said. "But you're not as smart as you think." Max was confused. "What are you talking about?" he asked. "I've been watching you, Max," the suspect said. "I knew you were on to me from the beginning. I wanted to see how far you would go to catch me." Max's heart sank. He had been played. He had been so focused on catching the suspect that he hadn't realized he was being led down a path of deception. "But why?" Max asked. The suspect shrugged. "For fun, I guess. To see if I could outsmart you." And I did. Max was angry, but he was also impressed. The suspect had been right under his nose the whole time, and he had never suspected a thing. The suspect held up his hands. "I surrender, Max. You win. Take me in." Max hesitated for a moment. Max slowly lowered his gun, eyeing the suspect warily. "I don't trust you," he said. The suspect chuckled. "You don't have to trust me, Max. But I'm tired of running. I'm ready to face the consequences of my actions." Max nodded slowly, keeping his gun trained on the suspect as he stepped forward to place him under arrest. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that the suspect was up to something. As he reached out to grab the suspect's arm, the man suddenly lunged forward, knocking Max's gun out of his hand. The two men grappled for a moment, rolling across the concrete floor of the warehouse. Max's training kicked in, and he quickly gained the upper hand. He pinned the suspect to the ground, handcuffing him tightly. Nice try, Max growled, his heart racing from the adrenaline of the fight. The suspect grinned up at him, his eyes glinting. You're not as smart as you think, Max. Max's stomach twisted in unease. What do you mean? The suspect's eyes flicked to something behind Max, and before Max could turn to see what it was, he felt a sharp pain in his neck. He stumbled backward, his vision swimming, as he realized the suspect had injected him with something. Max's limbs went numb, and he collapsed to the ground, watching helplessly as the suspect stood over him, laughing. You fell for it, Max, the suspect taunted. You're not the only one who can play mind games. Max tried to fight the effects of the drug, but it was too powerful. He could barely move and keep his eyes open as the suspect loomed over him. You should have known better, the suspect sneered. But now, it's too late. As Max's consciousness slipped away, he heard the sound of sirens in the distance. He tried to call for help, tried to fight back, but it was no use. The last thing he saw before he blacked out was the suspect's face, twisted in a triumphant grin. When Max woke up, he was in a hospital bed, surrounded by his colleagues. He tried to sit up, but his body was weak, his muscles unresponsive. What happened? He croaked. One of his colleagues stepped forward, a look of concern on his face. You were injected with a powerful drug, Max. It's a new one, we've never seen anything like it before. Max's mind raced as he struggled to remember what had happened. The suspect. He mumbled. He got away, his colleague said grimly. We're still searching for him, but he's gone underground. We'll catch him, Max. We won't let him get away with this. But Max knew better. He knew that he had been outsmarted, that the suspect was still one step ahead of him. He lay back on his pillow, staring up at the ceiling, wondering how he could have been so blind. In the end, it wasn't the suspect's violence or aggression that had brought Max down. It was his arrogance, his own belief in his abilities. He had been too confident, too sure of himself, and it had cost him everything. As he lay there, alone with his thoughts, Max realized that he had a lot to learn about the criminal mind. And he knew that he would never underestimate a suspect again. Over the next few weeks, Max worked tirelessly with his team to track down the suspect. They searched every lead and followed every tip, but each one seemed to lead to a dead end. It was as if the suspect had disappeared off the face of the earth. Max grew increasingly frustrated and restless. He couldn't shake the feeling that the suspect was still watching and waiting. And he knew that he was running out of time. One night, Max received a call from an informant. The man claimed to have information about the suspect's whereabouts, but he refused to meet in person. Instead, he gave Max an address and a time, telling him to come alone. Max hesitated for a moment, but the desperation in his gut drove him forward. He set out into the night, his heart pounding with adrenaline. When he arrived at the address, he found an abandoned warehouse. The door was unlocked, and Max cautiously stepped inside. The warehouse was dark and eerie, the only light coming from a single bulb dangling from the ceiling. Max's eyes scanned the shadows, searching for any sign of the suspect. Suddenly, he heard a noise from the far end of the warehouse. He tensed, his hand going to his gun, as he slowly made his way toward the sound. As he drew closer, he saw a figure standing in the darkness. It was the suspect, his face obscured by shadows. Max raised his gun, his finger tightening on the trigger. It's over, he said, his voice cold and steady. The suspect stepped forward, his hands raised in surrender. I know, he said. I'm ready to face the consequences. Max hesitated for a moment, his mind racing. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that the suspect was up to something. But then the suspect did something unexpected. He stepped out of the shadows, his hands still raised, and Max saw that his face was different. It was as if he had aged 20 years overnight. Max, the suspect said, his voice low and raspy. I'm sorry. Max felt a jolt of shock and confusion. He lowered his gun slightly, his mind racing. The suspect continued to speak, his words slow and measured. He told Max about a terminal illness that he had been diagnosed with, and how he had realized the error of his ways. "I can't undo what I've done," the suspect said. "But I can atone for it. I want to turn myself in, and I want to help you catch the other criminals that I worked with." Max listened in silence, his mind reeling. He had never encountered a suspect like this before, someone who had genuinely changed their ways. Slowly, he lowered his gun completely, and he stepped forward to shake the suspect's hand. "I believe you," he said. "Let's make things right." And so, in the end, the suspect's story had a different kind of ending. He turned himself in, and he helped Max and his team take down a whole network of criminals. It wasn't the ending that Max had expected, but it was a satisfying one nonetheless. That's it from today's story. I hope you liked it, so share this with your friends and colleagues. I'll meet you soon at the next one. Until then, bye.